Good afternoon and welcome to Feedback. I'm your host, Bethany James, and I'm here with Dr. James Showalter, an associate professor of history here at Langston University. How are you doing today, Mr. Showalter?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Well, today's discussion is actually going to be about Trump's first 100 days in office. So as we know, in the large scheme of things, the first 100 days doesn't really count for much, but we've been paying attention as Americans to that marker since the days of Franklin Roosevelt, his presidency. He took a lot of swift action during the Great Depression, and so we've been paying attention to that marker since then. President Trump has showed us that he's very cautious of this marker. Before the election, he actually put out a list of 60 promises for his first 100 days. And after looking over that list, he hasn't really, I think, even approached maybe 60% of that list. But this week, he was quoted as saying that his administration has done more in their first 90 days than any other administration. How do you feel about that?
I think that we have two comedians in Washington. One is Al Franken, who's a senator and very good, and the other is a president. Either that or else he smoked something interesting. He's done nothing. Franklin Roosevelt in the first 100 days did 15 major bills. Hoover, prior to him, a good Republican, got nothing done. The Depression set in soon after Hoover came into office. He did nothing at all, and people were literally starving to death. Within the first 100 days, Roosevelt, who didn't really like straight relief, he liked work relief, but he put into effect, I think it was the Emergency Relief something, ERA, Emergency Relief Agency or some such, which was to get relief out to the states quickly. And that day that he signed it, the administrator had already been appointed. The guy didn't have an office, so they gave him a desk in a hallway. And before he left for dinner that night, he'd signed $5 million worth of checks to be sent out to help immediate relief. And this series of things, the Federal Department, FDIC, I think the Tennessee Valley was in there, the various other work things were just put in and immediately started working and affecting America. Trump has done nothing. What he's found out is that big talk doesn't mean a thing. He doesn't know anything about governing. He never had any. I mean, he's the first president who's has had neither military experience nor governmental experience ever. And he simply is, getting a promise from Mr. Trump is like getting a rubber crutch. It doesn't help you much. He's just simply a serial liar. And his output has been nil. But what the Republicans have found is that opposition to Obama, for whatever reasons, was a nice thing to do. Now all of a sudden they're thrust into power, and they discover they have huge fissures within their party between the Tea Party extremists, the Paul Ryan libertarians, the kind of mainline guys that want to get reelected, and Trump, who doesn't know policy. And so they've got a real mess there, and they don't quite know what to do with it. They can't get much through Congress, even though they control Congress. So it's interesting. And many of the members are already waiting to see if they need to run away from Trump when they run in 2 years for office.
So. Now, I think that he was quoted as saying he would give himself maybe a B- as a grade for his presidency thus far. You've said, you haven't seen a lot of action. Really, the majority of the things that he signed into place have just been reversals of things from the Obama administration. What grade would you give his presidency? An F.
F. Jeff Sessions is pulling back on civil rights. He's pulling back on other things. Despite the rhetoric about local control, he's trying to force cities who are trying to shelter immigrants into conformity. The EPA administrator, our former attorney general, is an utter disaster, and he's going to destroy. He won't destroy the agency, thank God. First of all, I don't think he's smart enough to do that. But it's going to push back on things, and Americans have really gotten used to EPA, to the things that EPA does. I remember when the streets used to be full of glitter and the air polluted. Heck, I grew up in the Ohio River Valley.
it's snowing, 30 minutes later, there'd be speckles of soot on the snow. You know, it was bad, and the EPA has cleaned that up, and Americans don't want to go back on that. Other things, like he wants to defund the humanities and public broadcasting. Well, public broadcasting is wildly backed. I mean, it's just very popular and stuff. And in fact, Republicans have tried to do this before. Ronald Reagan tried to do it, etc. It's one of the he just, nothing in this thing is working. He picks a guy who's a chief of an oil company to run the foreign policy. Hardly ever talks to the people in the State Department. Goes on visits to different countries. Doesn't bother to go to the embassy and meet the people who actually do this stuff. This is common courtesy. He doesn't understand the common courtesy of the job. And you go on down the list, you know, and then Supreme Court Justice, whose mother actually tried to destroy the EPA under Reagan and failed, and was finally basically kicked out of office and kicked out of town. And Gorsuch comes in, and he's one of these ultra-conservative originalists, as they're called, but it's such a fake ideology to call it, you know, and he'll vote in favor of corporations and against the very people that elected Trump, which was supposedly the white working class. So it's, you know, it's kind of fun sitting back and watching the Republicans scramble. As long as Obama was there, they always had foil. You know, and you have Mitch McConnell saying at the beginning of Obama's regime that his whole purpose was to defeat Obama and make sure he didn't do 2 terms. Well, I'm glad Mushmouth didn't get his wish, because I can't stand the guy. But that's all their policy was, and now all of a sudden they're in office and they discovered they have no policy. So it's going to be, it's a bit of a mess.
What advice do you give young people who are maybe taking a look at this administration and are nervous or scared for what it may mean for their future?
Well, no, do you mean nervous or scared because you've got a guy who doesn't know policy and is vindictive and thin-skinned and all,
Yes.
and all that? Yeah.
Or maybe.
And in fact, in my Christmas letter this time, I noted the fact that the original founding fathers felt that the country needed to be run by honorable men. And there's nothing honorable about Mr. Trump. And he is the first president I have ever feared. But on the other hand, I think he's so incompetent that the fear is misplaced. What I'd say to the young people is, get the hell involved. When I see time and time again students in my classes in history who don't know beans about public policy, that you know, the only thing that's good for a newspaper is to put it in the bottom of a litter box. That's when all of this is available. I tell them, hey, 10 articles a month from New York Times or Washington Post for free. You can go on NPR anytime, BBC if you want international news. That's all free, and you know, they won't go to it. So it's a bear.
Well, we'll take that as a call to action.
Call to
Get
action.
the hell involved.
Get the hell involved, yes.
Thank you, Dr.
Yes.
Showalter, for being here with us on The Feedback. I'm Bethany James, and thank you all for watching.